India always had a space program. Vikram Sarabhai started in the 70s and 80s. After the initial success in the 80s and 90s, the program was a challenge. But ISRO and the way Vikram Sarabhai set up was very clear that it is an industry partnership that would help the space sector grow in India.
Also, was there any challenge that you had as you were taking over, as there was that transition that was happening?
So in the 98, when India had the nuclear blast, that's when the embargoes came in. And that really pushed us to consider Make in India for ISRO.
Engineering has gone from being something really sought after to a little bit of, we have that cushion now. We're able to produce a lot of engineers.
The cost of learning a new skill has come down. The cost of knowing a lot of fundamentals of engineering still remain. So if you look at the service industry, if you look at project space, you have 2 months to do this. And if you think about why that's the case, our education policy and what I've been through and all of us have been through is we have one final exam.
We see engineering as, I have completed something, I've ticked a box.
If you look at engineers churned out in the last 10, 15 years, a lot of them are moving to manufacturing or trying to say, okay, let me do something new myself.
There are many moments in history or in the growth of our nation that stay in our minds. And sometimes it's not just the moment itself, but who was in the room when it happened. So, as we have seen incredible steps forward in space technology, in precision engineering, manufacturing as a country, one of the very, very vivid images in our mind is all the women scientists of ISRO as the various missions, took shape, and we had mission Mangalyaan, we had Chandrayaan, and those are very, very powerful images. But also, behind these events and behind these stories are a bunch of small and medium and large organizations, manufacturing units, people bringing tons and tons of parts together. Every nut, every bolt, every screw on these flying machines comes from somewhere, and not everything is made just by an ISRO or by an HAL. So today we're very excited to have with us the Group CEO of Ankit Group, Ankit Patel, and we'll talk about manufacturing, precision technology, engineering skill in the country, and of course, bringing more women into this space. What say?
Yes, and I've had the sheer privilege, honestly, of working with Ankit for the last 3+ years. It's very rare to find those organizations where the dream is so big that even when you're standing on the outside, you can't help but be deeply, deeply touched by it. And just a beautiful work culture, and a person that I personally admire hugely. And very excited to have this conversation.
So, to be part of such a team and part of such an organization to say that, hey, I've put something on Mars. So, we have him in the room today. But who are we? I'm Subha Chandrasekharan, a leadership and career growth coach.
And I'm Hasita Krishna, founder at Motley Crew and a brand consultant.
So, welcome to Small Talk Work Play Build. Welcome, Ankit. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me out here.
So, I know that, Ankit Group is your family business, but how did you jump into it? Were you excited from the get-go, or, did you explore other things and then come in?
I'm a second generation. My father started the business. He started the business for want of employment.
Okay.
And want of building a career. And it such so happened that we lived on top of our factory. And I'm talking when I was 4 or 5 years old. And every time I got into trouble with my mother, I was banished to the factory downstairs. And that's when it started. Hindsight, when I think about it, why I like manufacturing. And I remember there was this one lathe machine operator, great storyteller, and he convinced me that if I could operate a lathe machine, I can fly a plane. And ever since then, I just fell in love with manufacturing. So I never needed a push to go into manufacturing. It came naturally. But when I think about it, I think it's more of fun memories. being in the shop floor, listening to the sound, things are getting made. Somebody telling me a story that this is a path to flying a plane, and when you're a 5, 6 year old,
Yeah,
captures imagination, and that set the path forward. So I didn't need the push, but I really loved being in a plant, and that's how it started way back.
that's nice. No, and I mean, I'd love to meet this gentleman because he can really inspire somebody.
Mm.
That's quite something. And it was always in aerospace. No, it was
No, so going back, we started the business, or my father started the business to make fasteners for the telephone industry. It's
okay.
interesting. Back in mid 70s, we all know the ITI,
Correct.
and some of us have used the big phone where you had to dial around. That phone used to have about 200 plus screws and bolts then,
Okay.
right? And that's how the whole journey started. Quickly realized, my father realized that the government contracts were a little difficult,
Mm.
and then moved to automotive in the early 80s with Myco, then now
Ah,
known as Bosch. And I think that's where he really learned and understood manufacturing for a German company. The foundations of a mindset of quality process came in from there, and that helped getting into the aerospace. India always had a space program. Vikram
correct.
Sarabhai started in the
Correct.
70s and 80s. After the initial success in the 80s and 90s, the program was a challenge. We've had a couple of failures of the SLV, ASLV.
Mm.
There was serious design change. But through that, ISRO continued investing. There were questions when India cannot have balance of payment in the late 80s, early 90s. Why do we need a space program? So India's been through that. But ISRO and the way Vikram Sarabhai set up was very clear that it is an industry partnership that would help the space sector grow in India. And we got into that in the early 90s to solve a problem for ISRO. They wanted rivets. I think that's how we got into the aerospace business. Truth be told, uh, I think the Make in India, now we hear about it. ISRO has always believed in that right from the 80s and the 90s.
Mm.
And that's when the first investments happened. Our business in the aerospace truly would not have been there if not for the events in 98 when India had the second nuclear test. And when that happened, there was complete embargo on all kinds of procurement by India from the rest of the world. And there was no other option but for India to make in India, for ISRO to localize. So in the 98, when
Mm.
India had the nuclear blast, that's when the embargoes came in. And that really pushed us to consider Make in India for ISRO. That's how the whole journey of aerospace fasteners started.
Mm.
Lots of support from ISRO, some great visionary leadership from their side to handhold not only us but whole bunch of vendors within the country. Fast forward 25 years, and you see most of the established aerospace manufacturers who are exporting out of India have their roots with ISRO,
Mm.
some form of development with ISRO. I think leadership plays a very important role.
Mm.
ISRO chairman is responsible for design, fly the rockets, and provide the satellite coverage. Whereas if you go to the other aerospace, you have a different design agency, a different quality agency,
Oh.
you have a different end user. I think that's something to do with the way the speed and the way ISRO has been successful in my mind.
Mm.
But a large part of it is just their leadership and their vision to say we will work with the private sector. That's how we started in the aerospace industry. We had another opportunity in 2004-5 when I joined the business. We had a very good running, or we have a very good running automotive fastener business.
Mm.
And when we looked at our capabilities, we said, okay, automotive is doing, we could invest in automotive, but then we'll have to scale up and compete with the larger players. Or we could double down on a new product startup kind of thing that we had started with the aerospace industry. Uh, and I'm glad we invested on the aerospace side. Uh, the industry has grown tremendously. And since we were the first movers in this, we built a lot of our technology in house. And that gives us competitive advantage today.
Sure.
2004, as you were taking over from the folks who had been running the company up until then, and even today, when you think of, I think the Ankit Group is now 40 years. There's a legacy of 40 years that needs to be respected and be considered, and at the same time, you're also at the forefront of so much innovation and so much of problem solving in the engineering space. How do these two prerogatives come together in your mind, and then, of course, in the organization? Also, was there any challenge that you had as you were taking over, as there was that transition that was happening? What was that conversation like, or what was that dialogue like?
Oh, um, I think the legacy of 40, 45 years is something that we are proud of. But the way I think about it now is a legacy is built if you are relevant in the business at any given point.
Mm.
Um, if we weren't relevant in the business 20 years ago, we wouldn't survive to be 40. So we continuously think about what our customers want, what's new out there, what can we develop, what's the competitive advantage, how do we build moats around our business. The way my mindset or the way I think about it is I'm paranoid about business. And that's a mindset that helps us think about new ideas, competitive advantage. But in a business, when I got in, I saw that my father did some of it or a lot of it in his time. The scales were very different. The risk taking appetite was different. A lot of it also has got to do with age difference. So when I got into the business, my father had been through his struggles,
Mm.
built a business, and once you get to an age, you are then playing not to lose versus playing to win. And when I joined in, I was a lot more hungry, I can admit now, and said, okay, let's bet the farm and everything else and the house and on that. So that was a challenge. My father and I got along extremely well. So the support he provided was okay, I've built something in the automotive that will continue. It's up to you to take the risks and go build what you want on the
Mm.
aerospace. I think that clarity was there.
Yeah.
Um, but having said that, organizational processes do get in the way. Uh,
Yeah.
we could not, or first we started off doing automotive aerospace in the same plant.
Oh.
Quickly realized that very different cultures, very different customers. We couldn't do it. So we had to take a big bet to say, okay, we'll just build another plant. Nobody did that before. We had no business, very small revenues from ISRO then. But I'm glad we did that. And I think at that time was a conversation to say, okay, what do we do? Who's going to run around to Jigni? And that time, 25 years ago, it was back of beyond, or it is back of beyond still. Um, that was one turning point. The other challenges also come up with processes. Um, how do we get technology in? Right? So I give you a simple example. The processes that worked very well, say in 2004-5 when I joined in, were all set up in the early 90s. Communication was written.
Mm.
Emails were there, but nobody in my organization used emails to communicate. There was one email that the customer and we would interact with. Again, just to set context, 2004 is just after Y2K. It's not so many years after. Companies are building stuff. Internet was around, but we still needed a modem to dial
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Yeah,
and do
yeah.
that. So it took a lot of push from my side to my father to say, you will stop printing emails and replying to it. Simple parts of it. Um, how did so the challenges were how do I get the organization out of their comfort zone
Hmm.
to the extent that one day it said no more printer and had to stop the paper getting that. I had support, but it's hard to change habits.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the challenge when you have a generation change. That's the challenge when we have to continuously reinvent ourselves. And I see that challenge even today. We have new technology coming in. We all talk about AI, but I see exactly what happened 25 years ago with my father happening today. A lot of skills have become irrelevant.
Yeah.
The skills need to be upgraded. And when I go back through the playbook, this comes back saying maybe you have to do the same thing. How do I force myself? How do I force my teams to do that? Um, I think that was part of it. The other challenges were just building an organization where there are no skill sets available. Um, we could not outsource any processes because there was nobody who did that. So we had to learn everything ourselves. Um, yes, we made fasteners, we did forging, thread rolling, but we had to learn our own heat treatment, our own surface treatment. And these are hard processes to learn if you've never done it. Even companies who've done it in the automotive don't pivot and don't move to aerospace because the requirements are very different. Uh, but then we had no choice, so we were forced to do it. And I'm glad we were in that situation because now we have everything in house. If I was going to start a business today, I would not have invested. I will not invest in any of these processes because there's enough vendors who have expertise.
Yeah.
Um, so, how do you build that skill?
Yeah.
When the change happened, the average age in our automotive plant would have been about 45. So, these were all people recruited by my father, build the skill with him. They understand that processes very well. So it worked efficiently. Now we're trying to build products for a new industry, and a lot of those skill sets cannot be moved to the aerospace. The mindset is different. So we went about and saying, okay, let's not build on this foundation. We'll just go build a new foundation. So we just recruited all young people. And even today, our average age would be around 28, 29.
Oh.
Which is quite low on the lower side, right, for a manufacturing.
Okay, and it is lower for manufacturing, but I don't think it's odd now.
Mm.
Um, manufacturing, people working in manufacturing, lifespan has changed dramatically. 70s, 80s, even 90s, somebody would join a manufacturing company and would usually retire out of that.
Correct,
You had a
correct.
20-year lifespan.
Their son or daughter would join and they would
Don't.
retire.
A lot has happened from 2000 to 2025 now. In Bangalore, we've seen the IT sectors come in. Uh, that brought in a different culture. IT sectors say, okay, you have a average lifespan of whatever, 5 years, 7 years. But the generation of that now is impacting manufacturing because people want to work for 4 5 years, look at something else new.
Ah,
That has also changed organization culture and hierarchies. So manufacturing was always thought about bureaucratic hierarchy. A lot of manufacturing to stay relevant is no longer that. People talk about agile manufacturing, they talk about lean manufacturing. But the fundamental what's happened is the hierarchy has been broken down. You would have 7 8 levels earlier. Now, to be relevant, not more than 4 or 5 layers. And once that happens, younger people get opportunity. The organization knowledge is lost, but then the creativity part increases, which attracts newer people. I think there's a balance between both.
yeah.
You make the same mistakes again, but with different
Yeah.
flavors and colors.
Which again is because again this industry is very process oriented and it's got so much compliance to it.
Yeah.
How do you weigh those two different priorities of saying when do we want to be creative and when do we want to just follow due process? I'm sure it's not an easy.
Extremely tough. And we see the impact of the question that you're asking in the industry today. We've heard about the challenges with Boeing.
Yeah.
And if you look at or read what's happening there, a lot of skill sets were lost during the pandemic years.
Okay.
And that is a knowledge lost. So in a process industry where you have so much compliance, that the organization knowledge is so important. And once you lose it, training new people becomes extremely difficult. For us in India now, I, we have to build organizations around it. Uh, I don't think we can expect people to be in a role for 20 years or be in an organization for 20, 25 years. I think those days have passed. So now it comes down to saying, okay, how can you build organizations? How can you build processes where the human element is only there for 3, 4 years, but it still survives um, with new people coming in? A lot of learning. I think the tools today make it easier. Video, audio,
Yeah.
and people talk about documentation. It's evolving. What we have been doing is we've tried a lot of permutation combination, but we've realized that if we groom talent internally, they have the highest chance of success in the industry we want them to be. The lateral, the side hires come with different cultures, and then unlearning and relearning is a challenge.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that we've been paying a lot of attention to, saying how can we groom talent within to solve exactly the problem. Saying there's industry knowledge, there is culture.
There's a very interesting parallel, or because I tend to, as a coach, I tend to work a lot more with corporate leaders, right? Who've either in MNCs, and there's this whole pressure of, is there a process? Is that process efficient? Is it productive? And like you said, it needs to be built, because that's how you create a bit of legacy, because churn is again high. But then they reach a certain stage, and then we're telling them, be the entrepreneur, which is essentially act like you own the business, right? Act like you can disrupt anything, act like you can take risk, act like you really, really own it. And then how would you decide, and what action would you take? And suddenly they don't have the skills for it, right? And as we're talking, I almost feel like there's a group that you can so wonderfully mentor, because there are skill sets that come from building that business from ground up, like the decisions of, do I go into aerospace, do we build it in house, do we do it through a vendor, etc. So your kind of growing leadership team, um, that also for some, to some extent, will see churn, right? How do you kind of help them, like what you said, learn, unlearn, build those skills?
I used to be frustrated with this churn
Hmm.
years ago. I've made peace with it now, saying, okay, that's the way it is. It took me a lot of time, 3, 4 years of frustration to say, oh, this is painful. People come, leave, we train them. But once I made peace with that, uh, I realized that people appreciate the training process. So I'll give you a couple of things that happened. We trained people, they worked well with us, and it took time for me to understand that people have aspirations to try out different things. People don't know what they really want when they are young. People like brand name, people like, oh, I want to work in a
Yeah,
large company,
very
I want to
much.
do. And the hunger is there for people, and they believe that I will succeed in every environment. It takes time for them to try out different environments to say, no, maybe I succeed in these couple of environments and not in every one. So we used to do training. We lost people, but then we had 1 or 2 examples where people came back. And I thought about it, and I call these guys, they are the boomerangers. So they train, they
Went
go
and
out,
came
come
back.
back. People who come back are the most productive and deliver on what the organization wants. Uh, in that case, there's a very good culture fit. And once 1 or 2 of those happen, then it also helped me make peace to say the process of training is extremely important. and also the process of giving them skills that will work in our culture is extremely important. Cultures are not portable easily. Every organization has a different culture. We Our products, a lot of people can manufacture. So we don't have a competitive advantage on products. We are built to design. Some customers give us their design and we build to that. So how do you build competitive advantages? How do you build a moat? And when you have people moving out, it becomes a lot more difficult. So the way I think about it is, can I build a moat around culture?
Mhm.
Can I create an environment where these people that we train perform extremely well here, and they need the tools around this environment to perform? And when they go to different organizations, other organizations will have different tools.
Yeah.
A lot of them will take to that, but some of them would still prefer the original tools that make them successful. And once that thought process came in, then we invest a lot in just being a unique culture, customer focused. We are very curious. We want to um, change the norms. Uh, I push my teams to say, let's be efficient. So these are parts of the way we go to business. It's not a skill that can say, I'm an engineer, I can do this, but these are the intangibles that really help with the culture build and the people. So coming back to your question, how do I think about it? How do we solve this people part? And it's easier to start when they are young, when they are out of college or in their first or second job. But once they hit 30, 35, 40, then you get set in your comfort level. Uh, Very difficult to change. And that's one part of it, of how we look at people, how we build this industry.
Correct.
And even today, see, we've had lateral hires, and it takes a lot of effort for them to understand um, values and culture within our organization.
Mhm.
And it's same across. I think that's the way you scale, you build, you
Right.
and attract
Yeah, yeah,
people.
yeah. Because you were mentioning engineering and youngsters. Engineering has gone from being something really sought after to a little bit of, we have that cushion now. We're able to produce a lot of engineers. Now the quality, of course, is something to debate or to talk about, but we have more seats, I think, than we have students now. We've reached that end of the spectrum, from it being very, very sought after to having a glut. But what are the skills that they're coming with? Has that curriculum changed enough? Is there something really drastic that needs to be done when an engineer, when you hire them as freshers? Um, like what percentage of skill sets do they come with that's even useful? Or is it okay, fine, it's just a mindset and they come with a learning mindset and we're able to kind of mold?
Um, I think the way the world has changed in the last 2 years with the advent of AI, today the most relevant skill set is, do engineers or anybody want to learn something new?
Mm.
The cost of learning a new skill has come down
Yeah.
tremendously. Um, the cost of knowing a lot of fundamentals of engineering still remain. Right? So that helps in our business. Um, but the time spent to learn that has dropped dramatically. So when I say cost of acquiring a fundamental engineering skill has come down by one fourth.
Mm.
The other part of it is the application part has changed. I think you brought up a point on our engineers, whether they have the relevant skill, they don't have relevant skill. Some of it is also got to do with our education process policy.
Yeah.
Engineers in India, industries work extremely well when you have a deadline. So if you look at the service industry, if you look at project space, you know you have 2 months to do this. And if you think about why that's the case, our education policy and what I've been through and all of us have been through is, we have one final exam.
Yeah.
You pass it, you go to the next. A lot of other countries don't have so much weightage on final exam, but you got to do every month
Yeah.
exams well to pass. And as a kid, if you're in an environment where it's do or die in one exam, you have that mindset to say, I'm going to figure out some way to pass that exam and build that skill. Versus a skill to say, I'm going to perform every single day, every
No.
week, every month.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult skill set to learn. A lot of manufacturing is doing the same thing again and again and again. And that is where the gap comes in between engineers, the way we have learned versus what the industry really needs. We need repeated stuff. In manufacturing, 80% is repeat. You don't do new things every day. The patience to have that or do that is very difficult. The additional aspect of the education impact of engineers is with are they ready to use the new tools? The aspiration is saying I'm an engineer, I have arrived. But today with the change of technology, an engineer is only a starting point for you to learn for the next 20 years in your life. um, that is the difficult challenge. I do find a lot of kids that we work with to say I'm engineer, I've done this 5 years, are reluctant to go back to school, are reluctant to learn up new skills, and that is the
We don't
challenge.
have that mindset, honestly. It's interesting what you said, that we see engineering as I have completed something, I've ticked a box,
Yeah.
right? Not as a starting point that we don't even talk much about specializing in that, in a further part of engineering. It's like finish engineering, find a job. And a lot of them just go the software route also, and not stick to the core.
So the what's happening in the software route today, the employment opportunities in the software field is drastically reducing.
Mm.
So if you look at engineers that were churned out in the last 10, 15 years, a lot of those jobs are not going to be there. But they have the culture of working in a technology company. A lot of them are moving to manufacturing, are trying to say, okay, let me do
Mhm.
something new myself. So now what we are seeing is we are seeing this um, movement of talent who has worked in an environment coming into manufacturing which wasn't there. And that's one more reason why we are see why manufacturing is becoming exciting.
Yeah.
There are new ideas coming in. As new ideas come in, there will be churn, there will be disruptors. Uh, but I think an innovation and happening in the tech industry, if you say software coding, is impacting manufacturing from a people flow perspective. People may become redundant in their jobs there, but they're saying, okay, wait a minute, I'm still an engineer.
Yeah.
A lot of people who have done their mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, have moved to software. But those software does not need that skill anymore. And then they're trying to go back to their original roots. And I think as that happens, manufacturing is becoming exciting. You have new companies being formed. People are taking that risk to say, okay, I will
Yeah.
make a new EV company or a drone
Correct.
company or
Correct.
any of those.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an interesting and a good trend, right? If they're able to find excitement in back in the core, like manufacturing of, and in their core skill set also. That's a great
It
move.
and the technology company led in the early 2000s with remuneration.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it is linked to that. Now, parents would encourage their kids to become an engineer, they become a software engineer. Right? That's the in thing. But now they're realizing that, okay, be engineer and then you can use that skills elsewhere. The additional part to think about is the usage of that skills across different fields. Now there's remuneration in manufacturing that would be parallel to technology.
Yeah.
Right? I have this conversation with a lot of young engineers who come down and say, "Oh, so my colleagues who are in technology are earning a lot more." So then we plot the career path. Yes, when you get into a software, the first 5, 7 years you have big jumps, and you earn a lot more in the first 5, 7 years. In manufacturing, the first 5, 7 years are investment to learn skills that engineering did not teach you. Right? How do you operate the manufacturing machines? It is the way to think about it is you're doing your masters on the shop floor, and once you get over that 10-year mark in manufacturing, you get to 12, 15. At that point, when you compare, there is little difference in the pace. As you get into 25 years difference, somebody who's done manufacturing at cutting edge industries in manufacturing for 25 years is extremely valuable. Same in technology will be paid less than somebody in manufacturing with ability to handle 2,000 people, union, non-union, government. But that skill set and the ability to handle chaos is so much higher, and that's what gets remunerated. Now, yes, not everybody makes it to the top, but if you do an apple to apple comparison, saying, assuming you had similar skill sets, the manufacturing pays in the second part of your career, not in the first part. The redundancy of a manufacturing skill is far less in the second part of your career than in the technology.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I say this, I'm saying, okay, let's remove the outliers. You do have the outliers in the technology manual.
Correct.
But if you
Everywhere. Yeah.
take a chunk of people who've done this, manufacturing now is able to provide remuneration which is higher than other fields. And that's because India's manufacturing story is coming back. There is consumption happening in the country. India is exporting a lot more. You hear about the number of iPhones India is exporting. You hear about the EVs that are going out. And all that feeds into manufacturing becoming cool.
Yeah.
I know it's genuinely becoming cool as, well, like you said, you're being compensated, you're continuously learning. That stagnation is, it's not go in and do everything, the same thing every day. All of those stories are now coming out more and more.
And
And
actually, it's a very interesting space to be part of, even as an outlier.
correct.
One memory that comes back to me is from the last Aero India, 2023. A couple of women had come to the stall, and they were taking a lot of pictures with a component that was on display. And it also is kind of reflective of some bias, I believe, which is internalized. Where after a while I asked them, can I help you in some way? And they said, oh, we are the ones who designed this part. And they were scientists at ISRO. So there's always, it's really an equality of the mind at the mind level. There's no longer any, okay, I come from this context or I come from this background. It's just my mind solves this problem and that's why I belong in the room. Which is the most interesting thing I think about engineering and manufacturing to me now. I suffered in college as well. And I think you answered a little bit of why that might have been the case. But to kind of look at it now and say, everything comes down to your ability to do things a certain way and to keep changing over a period of time. But as a group company that does these various different things, how do you pick who the right people are? And this, of course, is also a conversation on. I think Ankit, the Ankit Group is one of the few companies that I know of who have a very active mandate to hire more women in manufacturing. Where does that come from? Why that specific choice? And what does that add to your ecosystem?
I think just before that, I'll just add one. She pointed me to a video where a lot of women from your shop floor are speaking, and they are part of the manufacturing process, and their stories were so touching because they say we really enjoy what we do. There is something for the mind, and it is also a stable job, and they talk about how because of working here my kids' education. Like it's changed the trajectory of so many lives that they've been able to fund for their children's education, and they may go on to become engineers, etc., etc. So, just to add to her question of, there is so much of, women who are not utilized, so many women who are not utilized in the workforce today, and we keep thinking about it from, honestly, from a certain strata and above. But even at very, very entry level shop floor kind of jobs, what's the scope? Like, can we just bring in, hordes of them who are ready to commit to something which is steady, stable, interesting, and pays decently well, right? Like, just to add to
So
her.
from manufacturing, I think it's been generations of bias.
Mm,
From a shop floor today, women and men can do exactly the same jobs in our shop floor. Safety is the same. We are not a heavy industry, so
yeah.
there's not intense physical component to that. A lot of it is automated. A lot of it, there are tools to be done. So that's the hygiene factor, saying,
Mm,
is that work environment safe? Does that work environment provide provide tools for the women to succeed?
mm,
I think that is very clear, yes, not only in our industry, but a lot of manufacturing. So I think that has changed over a longer period of time. What impacts is, traditionally we had laws in the country that prevented, um, that made it difficult to have a lot of women employees on the manufacturing shop floor. So I'll give you an example. We've been trying to have more women employees. So about 8, 10 years ago, as we went down this path, we recruited a bunch of people for the shop floor. The laws in India does not, or then did not allow night shift for women.
ah,
Mm.
So what happened then was, we used to put them in the general shift or the first shift. So a lot of men, similar age groups who have skill set, landed up getting only the night shift jobs. And then they came back and said, so it is not right for us to be stuck only in the night shift, because it is impacting our families, our growth. So then we had to rethink about this. I'm glad the rules have been
mm.
updated now.
And that was also an outcome of IT night shift.
IT night shift, safety
Mm,
requirements, assemblies coming in, a whole bunch of it. I think even women have pushed back to say, no, we want our right to work.
mm,
We are open to working even in the night shift. And because of that, that's changed. But this is in the last 4, 5 years, I think the rules have been updated.
mm.
So that is the second layer, where it hindered companies to employ a lot of women, because then your night shift wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Mm.
And in manufacturing, you need your machines to run 24/7, otherwise, you don't make the returns on that. So that's the second part of it. The third part of that was skill set development. So, what a lot of companies did was, or even we do, is, what skill sets do women employees do better than the men employees? So, in our case, any inspection, the attention to detail, we
Mm,
find women employees have a lot more than the men employees. And I don't point out one, but just statistically, we've seen that different.
mm,
Um, Usually, factories are in industrial zones and industrial areas. So, our automotive factory is in a zone now which is surrounded almost in the city. So, we have a high percentage of women there who can walk and come to work.
mm,
In our aerospace, we are away from the city, we are in an industrial zone, and therefore, for them to come to the plant became difficult. So, we had to solve those, saying that how do we pick up women, how do we have safety for them in transportation so they can come to the plant and go back. Once they are in the plant, we've had to also think about hygiene factors, um, safety, rest areas, all of them. Can we design a factory which is exciting for women and men together? Then we have to rethink about our layouting. We have to think about lighting, various
yeah,
parts
yeah, it
of
all has
that.
to come together. Yeah.
Does it excite people to come and work there? So as you think about all of that, and we made those changes, women found it exciting to work on the shop floor. And as they do that, then the other processes come in. As you said about they like what they're doing.
Yeah.
I fundamentally people like to touch and feel the parts that they are creating, right? And once they do a good part, you feel proud about it. We do take effort to tell them the story of where the part is going, what's the end use of it, and people relate to it. But it's been a difficult journey, and it continues to be difficult. Today, our mandate is to get 25% women employees. We are at about 12, 13, and we struggle with it for these reasons. How do we get them at scale? Um, Now, what we are seeing is we are seeing more engineering people with mechanical engineering degree women coming in, which wasn't the case when I went through my engineering college. And that has opened up. Aeronautical engineering has opened up. So, as women take this in their fundamental college courses, they automatically will find jobs in the manufacturing world. We also see a lot more diversity of thought coming in, and that's why we push for women employees. Safety perspective. A lot of our safety programs have been pushed by women who have noticed things that men employees would have taken it for granted. Um, Packaging norms. I'm just thinking about examples that have been given out, examples of change that have come from women who have done a continuous improvement program. A lot of our communication to our customers, how do you communicate, all have been inspired by women working in our group, coming up with continuous improvement projects. So as these small wins happen, we try and celebrate it. We have a Women's Day celebration. So these recognitions go a long way, and that helps attract more people.
I think a large part of it, like you said, is the storytelling of that bigger picture, because I think manufacturing or any job, right? It's finally end of the day you're doing that one small line of code or making that one part over and over again. But in your case, there is specifically a much larger story to tell, right? In terms of the contribution to something that is actually going up as a rocket in the sky, or flying in the air. And I think those stories, when they're told, then it does become something that everybody starts looking at. And I think you guys do a good job of that.
And I believe storytelling helps remember or relate to a lot of processes and a lot of hard work that's been done. Um, One way we try and instill processes over change of people is by storytelling. What is the risk if you don't do certain things? And it's a lot. People retain that thought because of a story rather than a written work instruction. So that's the endeavor. It's hard to tell stories. Not everybody has skills to tell a story, but that's one thing that we look at from our senior leadership. Are they able to tell a story?
In fact, when we were introduced, that was the story that stuck in my mind as well, where the person making the introduction said his company makes the nuts and bolts that go into space, quite literally. And to this day, that message is just etched in my mind. So, quite an
So
exciting.
that's so it makes us very proud that we have parts that any aircraft that all of us fly on has some parts made by us. But today we have parts in space, we have parts on the moon, and on Mars as well, as the Mangalyaan mission went.
Wow. I'm sure there's no easy days, right? To hold together a large organization, multiple business lines, and then the changing dynamics of technology and people, and how to manage people, and now this new work from home, work from here, work from there, which maybe is a lesser of a battle in manufacturing. You have to be there. And
Um, I think I wouldn't say lesser of a battle. It's quite a battle because people who have to touch the part, there's no issue with that. But in manufacturing, you have a whole organization that is indirect to the part. The engineering teams, the quality, not engineering teams, you have the finance, you have marketing. And habits through COVID are hard to break. Um, and we struggle with that. Right? I do see the advantage of hybrid work or work from home, but I see the other side of it. We don't find people engaged as much or understand the culture of the organization if they are fully remote.
Mm.
Um, Today,
Especially if they came in during COVID times, then.
whether they came in. So, our thesis now is a hybrid or work from home works for tenured employees very well.
Mm.
It does not work for new employees because they don't have the connect, they don't have the face put down. And then it's a transactional. The approach becomes okay, I have to do this checklist, I have to do this job. It's a very transactional work engagement versus relationship built versus understanding why we are doing it. And the why of it takes time, effort to meet people, to really see it
Yeah.
to happen. There are certain areas where we want just remote because the skills are available. So it has opened up different parts of recruitment that we
Mm.
never thought of. But from a scalability, it is a challenge. So transactional versus relationship. I think that's the metric I have in my mind, or we talk
Yeah.
about on these hybrid work environments.
That's
No,
interesting.
we've.
Yeah.
I think we've been speaking about this. We had a previous guest also where we kind of deep dive into it, and I think now I'm starting to get the feeling like let's just stop talking about it because very clearly every organization has to do what works for them, not look left, look right, and say, oh, what are they doing? What should we copy? But what works for you, that also with trial and error, but get there in your own way and stick to that. Doesn't matter what the others are doing. Because,
Very true. And now we have research data coming in. There are a couple of papers published on what has worked with a hybrid model, what works with work from home, what does not work. I think there's very clear data to show creativity does not work with a work from home model. When I say creativity, idea generation, creativity
yeah,
as an organization as a whole,
brainstorming, meeting.
brainstorming, coming up with product development, all suffers if it's remote. There's enough data to show what works very well is individual performers work better on a hybrid or work from home environment. So, and as you said, it depends on what curve the organization is. I think the business model or the work environment model would be applicable to that.
Mm.
So I think another area we wanted to chat with you about is a lot of startup, I think investment and advisory work that you do, right? So what are you seeing there as how what are the challenges of today for the startups that you work with?
I think the what attracts me to the startup world is just the hunger of that entrepreneur to
Hmm.
build something. I mean, it's not easy. It's exciting to see somebody have that. I have a dream, I have a vision, and I want to make it happen. It takes a leap of faith. I mean, people make it sound easy, but it's not. But somebody willing to put his precious years of life doing that,
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
personally, I think that's commendable.
Yeah.
First, I think that is the reason that
Yeah.
I'm attracted to that.
And they're starting younger and younger.
Um, and and I think that risk taking appetite um, is what gets me excited, and I relate to that. I've done that in the past. I come from a business background, but for me, starting building businesses is what I do. Is Yes, I'm in the manufacturing, but the skill sets are portable
Correct.
across.
Yeah.
Today, startups, there are 100 opportunities and there are 100 problems. You can talk about it, you can write books about it. What I personally look and feel about it is, if I look at the founders, right? Does that person have the hunger to succeed? Right? People,
Hmm.
and we spoke about it earlier, people would move from uh, a job to say, okay, I want to start something new. Is that hunger deep enough? Do they have something to lose if this does not work? I think that's one or two metrics. Yes, majority of the startups fail, but that's a criteria as well. The second thing about it is the founder um, has the skills, but how, I wouldn't say ethical is one part of it, but how open is the founder in communicating problems? Because startups will have 100 problems. Is the mindset of the founder to say, oh, no, I will figure it out, I don't need to disclose, or am I open to ask for help? I think the
Right.
asking for help is a
Yeah.
skill I look for. And that is very important because nobody has all the skills required.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what will work out. And in startups, if you don't ask, you don't
Yeah.
succeed. I
But
think,
we glorify heroes, so the founder also feels like they need to overmanage, keep it quiet, figure it out.
okay, and the successful founders of Corona have asked for help. And the
Mm.
more you ask for help, it really, I'm just surprised the number of people willing to give help.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of it is in our mind saying that, oh, it's wrong to ask for help. Maybe
Can I
we've
go
not.
to this person or can I not? And also, I think speaking of things we don't know, scaling, right? And I presume, and this is my instinct, and I don't have data to back this, but I think where a lot of startups fail is in either complying with a playbook for how scale looks like, which is what the investment track tells us. Apart from that, there is really no prerogative on what scale means, right? Because it's not just the growth by numbers, it's not just the growth by employees, or even for that matter, growth by revenue, but scale, I think, is a mindset. And therefore, there's, a different way to scale a product versus a service versus a process for that matter. Um, any advice for those of us, and I will raise both hands and point at myself, but in terms of how do you even shift your mindset to say, hey, now I'm ready to scale? How do I know that, firstly? And secondly, once I know that, what should I be doing, or what should those of us who are looking at what that next step is? How do we go about articulating it for ourselves and then the rest of the team, and how do we really think about growing?
So I think first thing what you mentioned is scale is a
Mindset.
mindset. But at what level that mindset is, you are bound by your imagination. A startup starts from zero. So 0 to 1 is a huge scale. So I think scale, you have to redefine it at every stage. But how hungry are you? Is my scale to become 100 people organization? Is a good scale from 0 to 100. Or is my scale in revenue? So I think the entrepreneur needs to define that metric of scale, how he or she is going to measure it. So that's one part of it. Once you have that thing that, okay, I aspire to grow my organization to X, you start scaling up once you have data to show that your product service works. So product market fit. I mean, people talk about that. Uh, is that product market fit scalable to your aspiration?
Hmm. Hmm.
You can have a product market fit, but it can grow only twice,
Hmm.
and it would work. So you have startups who have niche products, do it extremely well, and they have a great product market fit, but it may not fit 20 markets. The aspiration of the entrepreneur and the product market fit may not match. So that's one thing to think about. The other thing is assuming the product fit or the product service market fit. Then it comes on resources to say, okay, is there fuel to take the organization up? A lot of times, and I've seen this, it's the way I think about it is a baby growing. If the baby has the nourishment, the baby will grow faster. If you don't give it nourishment, then you are growing, or you have companies that become pygmy, or they are
Mm.
stunted growth. So
Mm.
that's the mindset to think about, saying every business needs resources to grow, money, people, ideas, creativity, all of that, and you need that in healthy proportions.
Hmm.
One without the other will not work. The challenge for entrepreneurs is, what is that healthy mix? Sometimes funding would be, and that's the biggest challenge. Saying everybody knows you need resources to grow a business, but how does that entrepreneur give his or her time to say, okay, I'm going to get money, I'm going to get idea, I'm going to do operations, I'm going to do policies, I'm going to build a culture, I'm going to define a value. And that is the challenge. What is the menu of vitamins that you give the
Absolutely.
and there is no set playbook.
Mhm.
At every point in the organization's growth, it changes. There are certain things that are housekeeping, I think, that founders can do upfront easily. Knowing what kind of people they will work with. So you attract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is which customers they will not work with. A lot of times when you're starting, a lot of it is spray and pray. You'll try 10 things, what sticks in. You do that once. Once you get feedback, I think it's very important to know what not to do.
And it's so liberating when you figure out who you don't want to work with. I mean, just personal
Yeah.
experience in
Yeah.
different
Also, what
ways.
you don't want to be doing
Yeah,
overall.
yeah.
Yeah.
The
And
energy it
it's
saps.
not difficult to define it.
Mm-hmm.
When you're starting, you want to do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But saying that, no, maybe I should not do these 10 things, frees up mental space. And that you can then refocus on the other resources that the business needs. I think these are the things that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. I struggle with. And it's a continuous, I have to remind what not to do is as important as what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I learned this from my cricketing days, actually. We talk about it quite a bit with my friends. You don't have to play every ball. And it's
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
to leave a lot of balls when you
Yeah,
look at
yeah,
cricket or
yeah.
test match. It's not a startup is not a T20 game. It's
Yeah.
more of long. So I think those skills have helped me. But
Mm.
now I can relate to it. But when you're in it, when you're starting the business, you want to do everything. You want every contract to win. You want to win every order.
Yeah.
You want to deliver everything, and you want to make money on everything. It's not possible.
Yeah, yeah. No,
And
I mean,
what
even something like this podcast, we've had so many conversations where we want everyone to listen, but
at
you
some
have
point
to.
we have to sit down and define who that everyone is, because we do have that picture in our mind. It's not that that person doesn't exist. We all have that picture in our mind, but it's scary to say this is it, right?
Yeah,
Because then it brings up the big question of what about everything else and everyone else who I'm now leaving out. I think it's been a bit of a learning curve. A bit is an understatement. I think it's been a huge learning curve
I
to
think it
really,
happens. We all get distracted by those shiny lights,
yeah.
yes, very much.
and it's very tempting. But the shiny lights are there to distract you, and the founders, entrepreneurs who can move away from that distraction and focus have a higher probability of success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, ask like those who are taking the help of advisors like you, simply asking for help, right? Like you can point out that hey, that looks like a distraction to you, and we've had friends help us that way, saying like this doesn't seem your lane. Why are you going there? And you need to hear those voices, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
need to, and for that you have to ask also.
yeah.
So in your work with young startups, what has excited you? Like, is it something that you're seeing which is a new technology or a new approach, or how do you kind of, is there something?
What has excited me is how technology has been used in old economy.
Hmm.
I think that's the bridge which I'm seeing in the last 5 7 years. If you look at most of every startup is called a technology company now. So I think that
Plus
is
AI.
AI. But the use cases of them are really impacting stuff. So finance is one which is
Yeah.
really long.
Yeah.
But I'll come closer to what's happening in the space sector. It's remarkable. Today you have startups who are really solving. I can give you an example. We were invested in a company which uses satellite imagery to predict yield of crops.
Hmm.
It sounds simple enough, but to put that together, um, that company will be able to tell you that the yield of coffee would be higher this year before even the coffee planter would know it themselves. But how have they solved that? They've taken image recognition technology, they've taken satellite miniaturization, they've leveraged on low cost launch. So all of this coming together, and that is exciting part. So I do follow technology from application perspective, but using it in in old economies is what I think is unlocking a lot of value, and that value is relatable to me. I don't know. I used to code a little, but I don't do that anymore. I'm a nerd. I love doing that. Uh, but just following the applications of that is great. And you have lots of industries. Things are happening in sports similar to that. It's happening in the food industry. Um, just using this, and I think the unlocking of that value is what's exciting in startups. And I think coming back to earlier question, if the founders or the people can understand what value they are creating,
Yeah.
I think then you can position for success better.
Yeah.
A lot of times, founders don't know what value they are creating.
Absolutely. And I think that is the actual gap. And even when we come down to marketing speak, we always say, ask the customer what about it is working and not working. But really, I think the question we're asking ourselves is, what about this system makes more sense than a similar system elsewhere? And that's the really tricky, especially in services, I find that that's a tricky question to answer. And the best solution to that has been to just ask the people who are on the receiving end of that service
I
day
mean,
in, day
that's
out.
the best free advice you can get. Or
Yeah, yeah.
if a customer tells you, I don't like it,
I mean, good thank
I say
you in
thank you.
some
Yeah?
ways. Yeah, yeah.
Tell me more, actually, is the
Yes.
next question.
Yeah, yeah.
In our case, a lot of our ideas for new products all have come from customers. It's not that we have invented or thought of a new application, but there's a pain problem a customer is facing in small places, and that has come up. Actually, last 2 3 products that we have developed are all because of a pain point. And again, the mindset to ask that, to say, what is your challenge? What keeps you up at night? What has frustrated you in the last 1 month? And customers love to share. And that is a treasure trove of what to do for the next 5 years or next 3 years of product development. I think that's one thing I ask all my customers when I meet them. It's an hour. But what are your pain points? And I think that's where most of our new ideas come from.
Lovely. So I think we've done quite a bit of work and build, and so that leaves us with play. And from what little is there on your LinkedIn bio, there's a lot of play in your life, right? And with something as odd for India as skiing. So where did that journey start?
Uh, skiing started few years ago. I learned skiing quite late in my life, but I always played some of the other sport. Cricket was part of me growing up. I played a lot of that, and I enjoy outdoors. I enjoy golf. Enjoy being outdoors. Um, when I think about it, a lot of these sport helps me relax my mind because I'm just paying focused on one action so that it calms the 100 voices in the mind. So skiing started off actually as a family thing, saying, okay, what can I do with my son and my wife as a family thing? And once I did it couple of times, I just got hooked onto it. And as I do more of it, that becomes also my relaxation time. It's a physically very active, but as I do a very physical active, my mind is relaxing. So I've been to with my family skiing. Typically, it's 4 5 days a week or so, but it takes me 2 days, 3 days to really get into that zone. And it happens when I'm at the top of a mountain. If I take a wrong turn, I'm falling 500 feet and breaking my bone. So I'm really focusing on survival.
Ah,
And I find that very relaxing at the end of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, as you run a business, and you guys know it's a lonely journey. You have so many voices in your head. You are trying to solve 100 problems at the same time, and to relax, it's very difficult. I've tried yoga. I've tried meditation. I've tried various other paths, but I think sports brings that focus on one uh, action. Or if I play golf, just to repeat that swing again,
ah.
that it just relaxes my mind, and that's why I enjoy doing that.
No, I mean, honestly, this has become almost like a skill that we're having to talk about with senior leaders and those in high pressure jobs, that find that one more thing. It's not a distraction when it actually calms you down, or gives you space to do what you otherwise do better, right? And we've spoken so much about
Extensively.
what
Yeah.
diving brings to her, but this is almost a missing skill today in many corporate folks, that it has just been one day after the other at work, and there's been no time to cultivate the other side. And there could be so many things that interest a person, and like you said, it could come at any stage in life. It's not
I
that,
think
oh, I needed to have been this way. uh,
it also goes back to how we grew up in school.
Very much.
Um, and I see that if you're in a school environment and you had extracurricular and you participated in that, and if your parents encouraged you
Yeah,
to
if you
do
were
that,
rewarded for it. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
you find senior people saying, it is okay for me to do a second thing. But if you come from an environment growing up saying your only goal in life is to study,
Yeah,
do that
yeah.
higher education, then you it's very difficult to think differently. And a lot of times parents also have to shoulder that responsibility, and you need focus, but you also need other skills. It could be sport, it could be music, it could be drama, it could be whatever that is. But I think we've lost a lot of we've lost a lot of talent
Very
because
much.
they just know to do one thing. And when they
Mm-hmm.
get stressed up, they don't know how to cope with that.
Correct.
And today, as part of what we try and do recruitment, we ask what else do they know? Because with skill development, it's moot point whether they have the skill for the job. It's easy for us to train them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Once we train them for the skill, do they know how to relax? It's not something that you can give
Yeah,
a
interesting.
playbook. Everybody has their own way to
Correct.
relax.
Yeah.
And watching movie is not relaxing. On Netflix is not relaxing because the, you are watching something
It's very
to
passive.
numb. Yes,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
passive. You're numbing the relaxation. It's not really relaxing you. It's tough, and I'm with you.
yeah, yeah.
A lot of people don't know how to do that.
They just don't. And there's an interesting, angle to what you're saying, that especially in high precision, high tech kind of work, if you don't know how to cope, because not everything is going to go right all the time, and the kind of application of some of the stuff that you do, the implications are large. And if you're going to sit with that stress, it's so counterproductive.
And a lot of people feel guilty about it.
Mm.
That's true. I think we've also encouraged that culture of not talking enough about these,
Correct.
things.
Yeah.
But you brought it together so well, in the sense that I think I could not have articulated why diving means as much to me as you did with the skiing, because that's exactly what it is. And that's why I don't, or at least I no longer feel the need to explain it or to apologize for, you know.
So I'll give you an example. So skiing started off as a family thing for me, but now uh, I go and ski by myself, and my wife understands that, and I've explained this to her, saying in a 5 days when we go ski, the first 2 days she knows that, oh, I see you distracted.
Mm.
What's happening at work? Then day 3, day 4, I am with the family. So it takes that much time to decouple. And with emails and WhatsApp, there is always something pinging.
Correct.
So you're always connected. So we are so hyper connected today, it's extremely difficult to disconnect. And so now I take time off for myself to do this. And I don't feel guilty. I know that if I'm getting extremely stressed out, because then my work performance goes down. When I get this time off, I've come up with a lot of creative ways to solve problems.
Yeah.
There is um, just mental blocks uh, that build up. And how do you do uh, Diwali cleaning for your mind, I guess? Just move it out and
More often.
So
yeah.
true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like we need a
Yeah.
spring cleaning, summer cleaning, autumn cleaning. Yeah, we need to make
Yeah.
it a part of. It's actually a skill now, like
It
because
is,
there's too much of kind of information and activity overload in all our lives that
and it's
it's
good to slow
important.
down. I
Yeah.
think you need to slow down to go fast. Is what which your mind needs to slow down to really go fast again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With play, the other part of sport is also it's a team sport. One thing that I really learned from sport is you have to do your bit, and you and the outcome may not be what you want. And how do you just cope with that? Right? You win as a team, you lose as a team. You may have prepared perfectly, but you lose as a team. You can't. It's not an individual blame game, and a lot of work is around that. Um, I do find people in creative job, no, when you do brainstorming, right, or when you debate about an idea, people would debate very well, very healthily. Once a decision is done, a lot of people who debated against that decision have then checked out,
Mm.
and that's not work environment. You don't. How do you learn that? You learn that by playing any team oriented activity, music, band, because you are collectively responsible for everybody's success and failure.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's no playbook to, you have to experience it. I tell my son that, uh, and kids, we tell kids, oh, you can't blame this, you can't blame that, you have to think about it. But as adults we forget that,
That's true. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
bringing that to workplace creates a very toxic culture, and it's hard. And you have to lead that by example. You have to make sure that your senior team understands that. Talking about it helps. But instincts are uh, honed over time. You can't say, okay, I'm going to switch off this instinct.
Yeah.
It's been a very relaxing and inspiring conversation. Thank you, Ankit, for I think we covered a wide kind of
Array of
range of
topics. Yeah. Yeah.
topics. Thank you for that.
No, it's a pleasure.
Uh,
Thank you.
Yeah.
It
what
got me thinking also a lot.
Yeah.
So we are hearing this now that this is a nice space to just reflect and have a simple conversation. So it's nice to hear that too.
Yeah, because I wouldn't talk about a lot of these
Yeah.
history story because you get lost in day to day, right?
Yeah.
And it's a good way to reflect back on what worked, what did
Yeah.
not work,
Yeah.
or just where we came from.
And a story about you that I have told Subha in the past, maybe I haven't shared that with you, is um, he's always there on the shop floor. Like the presence
Mm.
is very
Mm.
significant in and of itself. Like I remember this time when we wanted a top view shot of the shop floor, and you had actually climbed onto the movable trolley to be able to take a picture from that angle. So I think for me, it's proof that even at the very top, you can still be very excited about what you're showing up for on
Yeah.
a daily
Yeah.
basis, and that's something I've always taken away from you.
And I think I get excited about it. I love it, but I see the impact of that um, from other people as well. Um, if you're excited about it, people get excited. Uh, if it's a downer day, then it's a downer across the
Yeah.
organization. Even at home, right? So, why did I get into the family business? You asked me. Was my father? He had tough days, but I saw him excited when he came home. I don't remember a day where he came back and said, "I had a crappy day at work."
Mm.
I know he had most crappy days. There would be
Mm.
one good day and
Mm.
50 bad days.
Yeah.
But I think that energy of coming home and sharing that, oh, today we are doing something for ISRO. This is a screw. Or even when I was young, there was some exhibition and there was a fire truck. I remember him taking me there and saying, "Oh, see, that is our screw bolt there. Go find it."
Oh.
Just feeling proud on that, and made me very proud. And when I tell that story, I see my son doing that. He would ask me. Now he has said, "Oh, what's new at work? What are you doing? Any new product?" Um, I see a couple of our people who have older senior people. They ask me, "What's exciting? What's new?" I think that's the storytelling. I mean, if you're excited about it, it works. If you're not excited, it's easy to tell.
Thank you so much again for your
Thank you very
time,
much, Yoga.
Ankit.
Thank you very much,
Thanks so
Hasita.
much,
I had a
Ankit.
great
This is
time
amazing. Thank
speaking
you.
with you guys.
So, my read, watch, listen today is a watch. And this was a very surprising documentary experience. Beckham, that is the David Beckham story on Netflix. And I think I expected to hear about his football fame and his celebrity wife and probably the lifestyle that they live now. But what really caught or what really catches your attention when you're watching this documentary of his life is the years and years of just sheer grit, hard work that he's put to get where he is. Someone who took a red card in a World Cup, was kicked out, was really public enemy number one for the country. And what did he do? He didn't, slink away. He didn't kind of, moan and sulk. He just showed up for practice every day after that. And I think that's kind of the first time I was hearing about it from him. And it's very, very inspiring that finally you've got to do the work. You don't become a celebrity overnight. You don't become a sports, superstar overnight. And for each one of them, there is years of hard work, support, a village that makes it happen, and finally the individual who really, really wants it so badly. So Beckham is a beautiful watch, especially for that one scene where he's just patiently grilling a piece of mushroom. You'll get it when you see it. What about you?
I have a watch recommendation as well. Today's conversation reminded me of the child who once wanted to be an astronaut and my ensuing love hate relationship with physics. Physics and I is a book that needs to be written at some point. But until we get there, go look up Professor Shankar's lectures at Yale University on YouTube, recorded about 15 years ago, maybe more. And just his Newtonian physics, the 24 lessons that he delivers, they went from being my sleep stories to my wake up stories to now I'm actually taking notes. And I feel like if he was my professor, I might have cracked it. So if you have similar feelings about the nerd inside you, then please go give it a listen. Even otherwise, one of the most beautifully delivered lectures on a subject that we all just kind of sort of live with on a daily basis but don't really understand.
That's a great reco. And I think the beautiful thing was she shared one of those reels with me. And as usual, I went to comments. And the first comment was from a podcaster that I really, really like and hope to get one day. And there's Dr. Maya Shankar. And she says, "Oh, that's my dad." So, full circle moment. Thank you so much for watching Small Talk. We hope you liked this episode and we hope you go back and watch the previous ones. Remember to like, subscribe, put down your comments, tell us what you'd like to see more of, and see you next time. Bye, folks.
Bye.